Welcome members to our home, and today I figured I'd just bring you along for this. Nothing super formal. You probably recognize this room from some of the videos. Yes, we are in our food storage room that's outside of our cold room. So I'm gonna bring you along into the cold room, show you what we do at this time of year. So we're coming out of winter, so I usually go through the cold room and just make sure everything is working the way it should. It's just one of those things. You don't think about it much when it's all working, but if it stops working, it shows up pretty quick in your food. So I'm just going to show you how this is set up and what I'm looking at. So you can see just from the construction that this is a separate room from the rest of the storage room, and there's actually a insulated wall with an insulated door, and it's nothing fancy, but it makes it solid. So you can see on this door, there's just a simple gate latch. So we're going to open that and immediately the light pops on. You can see it shuts off because there's a pressure button. I'll show you that as well. But we're going to go inside and I'm going to show you, just so you can see with no cuts, what the temperature is inside. So you can see we're right about 50 degrees today. And that's about perfect in my opinion for everything. You can see this is actually a potato storage area that has 0 potatoes in it. And you can see some of the things that you've seen in other videos. So I'm going to set this on the tripod and then we can go from there. Before I put the camera on the tripod, I want to show you an experiment that I'm running on some meat and meat storage without electricity. So this is my first attempt at biltong. And I made this last October. And this is the interesting thing, because this is what's left of the biltong that I made. And I'm going to show you this, but man, there's meat in there. Of course, it smells really good. There's no refrigeration other than what you saw, 50 degrees, but there's a special way of making this. And this is what you're left with. Of course, this is pretty hard. You slice it up very thinly to eat it, but it is perfectly preserved without electricity for now. This is what, 5 months? That's pretty good. So it just sits in a paper bag so that it can breathe well and that nothing happens to it. So this is it, nothing fancy. But honestly, I am so excited to show Survival Fit Adventures memberships exactly what is going on behind the scenes and how everything works, and a lot more in detail than I can just on the weekly videos. So cold rooms work best when they are simple and consistent. I think a lot of people expect them to be more complicated than they really need to be, but really it comes down to airflow and paying attention to what's going on. Just like the meat I showed you, you have to pay attention. And again, every so often I come in here and just give it a little smell, because you want to make sure that there's nothing going on there that shouldn't be going on. And if there was any bacteria, you would smell it immediately. So I know that that meat is good. And now, like I said, 5 months later, that's pretty cool. So you'll notice that it's not perfectly uniform in here. There is spaces between things and it's not just jam packed. And that is for airflow. We have certain things on certain shelves for reasons and organization. Airflow is really important, and I'm going to show you exactly what that means. So I'm going to get out the step stool and I'm going to climb up here in front of you and show you our airflow system. I have to do an important job, and that is in the springtime when it gets warm enough, I have to take out this plug from the airflow pipe. Now this has been in here because it does get to like -30 here. So if you don't plug this, you start getting frost and condensation, and also it just gets way too cold. So all this is an old towel stuffed in there, and now I can feel, no, actually you can't feel anything right now. It must be fairly neutral. Oh yeah, but I have to go do the bottom one to let more airflow in. So we'll talk about that right away. I'm just gonna hold the camera in my hand just so you can see, move the step system out of the way, and you can see the bottom pipe here. So it's way down at the floor because this is where, and I'm gonna pull this out of there. Now You can see that pipe. It actually runs out to the exterior of the house, up a lot higher, but it's letting cold air in. And then the top one, which will go all the way up there, lets the warm air out. So you're getting constant airflow through the room. I wanted to bring you outside because this is the outside of those vents to those pipes that came up. So this one over here is the one that goes all the way down to the bottom. And then this one over here is the one that exhausts out of the top. These come out just above the foundation and exhaust. So you've got your in, you got your out, the room breathes. The cold air enters down low and it settles, and the warm air goes out the top. And then you always have that airflow. This is a subtle thing, but it really matters over time. And if you just have no ventilation at all, you can definitely end up with condensation, and you can have things mold. You can have, without airflow, bad things can happen to your storage. I think this is where people overthink things a bit. They focus on all the insulation that you need to make a cold room, which is good, but airflow is usually the part that gets missed. Or they seal everything up tight thinking that that's better, but then the air just sits, right? This is the kind of room that develops its own miniature environment, whether it wants to or not, because we keep the air moving slowly. It's nothing aggressive. It's nothing using electricity or fans or anything like that. It's just enough airflow from the bottom to the top. And this is why I wanted to do this video with you today, just to show you a tiny little bit of work that goes into maintaining a cold room like this, because this is insulated. This is insulated from the other wall. This is actually a 2x6 insulated wall from our other side of our food storage, which is back here, which you've seen, where there's the can sorters and all of the totes. But this remains at about that 50 degrees because of insulation. It's got really good ceiling insulation as well. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But what I had to do today is take those plugs out of the lines for spring, because you can get a lot of frost buildup and moisture buildup if you don't do that here. It can be really foggy sometimes. So you saw me unplug those pipes. It's super simple, super easy. And then I put them in again about, let's just see, at the end of November, or whenever I see on the weather that it's really going to drop. So this week we're hitting 66 degrees. So pull out those plugs. Finally, I just go through and open everything up and make sure that the air can move the way it's supposed to. And it's not a big job at all, but it's really important. In other climates, you may not have to do this at all. Or some of you may only have to do it for like 2 months, December or January or something like that. After you build something like this, the only way to know it for yourself is to watch your temperature and adjust. Here, even with the plugs, if it is -20 for a week, we may have to open this door to the outside room for an hour or so just to warm it up a little bit. I do that if it drops below 40 degrees. I like to keep it between 40 and 50. But if this pipe system gets restricted at all, if you start putting stuff in front of it or blocking it off, especially in the hot months, the whole system changes. And you might not notice right away if you don't pay attention to the thermometer. Really important to always be checking that thermometer. And you can see it's already gone up to about 54 degrees. So it's gone up by 4 degrees just by having this door open to do this video work. And these challenges, they show up usually in the form of something not storing as well as it should. You start picking up on little patterns over time, like where things tend to stay colder. And obviously cold air stays low, so that's where we keep our water is fairly close to the floor, because you know what? If it got too cold or something right at the bottom and the water froze a little bit, it's just water. That's not a big deal, and we're not going to let it freeze solid. We would get in here and make sure, but we don't want some of these other things freezing. Like you don't want your canned meat, for example, to freeze. You don't want, well, these wouldn't freeze because of the sugar content, but you don't want other things, you know what I mean, to freeze. You also need to know where you're going to get a little bit of moisture first. We are in a dry area. We have never had any problems with mold. We've never had any problems with mildew, anything like that. And it just comes from using the system, paying attention. Like I said, the meat, smelling it, like looking, smelling, adjusting your methods. There's no perfect setup. And it's really more about paying attention and adjusting as you go. So yeah, nothing groundbreaking unless you're digging a new cold room, like physically digging, groundbreaking. That's supposed to be a joke. But, you know, really just using the same technology as our grandparents and their grandparents before them, our ancestors have used for hundreds of years to store food without a refrigerator, right? I just wanted to show you part of our routine as maintaining this airflow that makes this all possible and regulates that temperature. So yes, you need insulation. Yes, you need a dedicated space. You also need those pipes that run from the outside to the inside, one low, one high. That's how it works. But this is one of the systems that quietly does work in the background, and when it's working properly, you don't think about it at all, which is the goal. I'm really excited to get into specifics on some of these videos coming up in the membership area that show how we use the 30-day meal plan, that show how we store energy, that show how we are ready to evacuate if necessary, that show how we are ready to defend our property. It's all details, and it is directed by your questions and comments. So thank you for those.